Hello, folks. You are listening to the Deal by Me podcast with Dr. James W. Smith, your host. This is where we ask guests to tell us your story. Your story can encourage, inspire, and hopefully transform a life. Today, we have with us Kevin Palmieri, who is an interesting and very exciting guest who has dealt with depression, suicidal situations and problems in his life, but he became very passionate about self improvement and entrepreneur. And through his podcasting and speaking, he made it his life purpose to make a positive impact on as many people as possible. I'm just so grateful and so thrilled to have Kevin share with us today. Kevin, thank you for sharing. It's
Of course, James. Of course.
we love having you. I've had the opportunity to just look at your bio a little bit, and I see where you are a podcaster. You have built a business, and I just want you to know that I am a minister, a pastor, and retiring at the end of this month. 2 months short of serving 32 years at the same church. I wanted to start a podcast because I wanted to continue my ministry. And so what I did was to do something where I thought could benefit other folks. And if I could have somebody to share their experiences, the events in their lives that they feel could benefit somebody else, and how they have even been challenged with these same events and situations in their lives. And so you were a perfect candidate for me to try to interview today. And so I want to just ask you if you would just, first of all, share a little bit with us about yourself, your background, where we're interviewing each other from, or at least where you are, and just so the listener will just know a little bit about you
Yeah,
before
yeah.
we get too far into the questioning.
Well, first of all, James, thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Just for the listeners and the viewers, we've been trying to schedule this, and our schedules were all over the place. So I'm very grateful that I'm here today, and I appreciate you having me. And anything I can do to help the mission, I am here for. So I am tuning in right now from New Hampshire, but so it's not exactly the way that people think, right? James says Kevin's a podcaster and he's got a successful business and all this happy jazz. And that's just not where it started. And that's not where it started for anybody. So I had very humble beginnings. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. And I decided very early on in life that I wasn't going to go to college. So I am just a man who has, I would say, a good amount of life experience because I took different paths than most people. Eventually, I got into podcasting. I had a very challenging time in my job, and I had some mental health stuff going on, left my job and went all in into podcasting. And here we are almost 1,200 episodes later.
Wow, beautiful. Let me just ask you a couple of questions. Number one, um, if you would just begin by just sharing with listeners uh, your experiences and events that you feel can benefit them.
Mm.
Can you just kind of do that briefly for us?
Yeah.
And I don't generally do this in the beginning, but your story is one I want to get right straight to it early.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So if James was to look at me in my mid 20s, 25 years old, James would see a young man who had a high paying job. He would see a young man who had a sports car. He would see a young man who had a model girlfriend. He would see a young man who was in the best shape of his life because he had just won a bodybuilding show, and he would see a young man who had just moved to a nice new apartment. By all outside standards, I was crushing it and I was living the dream. But internally, I was very insecure. Internally, I was very scarce. And internally, I was not what I was projecting on the outside. So one day, my girlfriend came to me and she said, "Hey, I want to move from New Hampshire to California and I want to chase my dreams. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a dream chaser. I want to have impact. I want to do different things." And in my scarcity, James, and in my insecurity, I gave her every reason in the world why she shouldn't do it. I just, you're going to fail. You're not going to succeed. Here's a list of reasons why. Obviously, that conversation did not go well and it did not end well. So she ended up leaving me and she went across the country and she chased her dreams. And that's exactly what she should have done. But I had this moment, James, where I said to myself, okay, I need to fix something. I need to change something. I started practicing self-awareness and asking myself questions about me, but somehow I landed on, I need to go make more money. That's what it is. That's exactly what needs to happen here. That's going to fix everything. We're going to be fine. So I set the intention and I said, next year, I'm going to make the most money I've ever made. That is my goal. I will remain steadfast in that. That is my intention. So the next year starts, I get a promotion at my company. I was working in an industry called weatherization. All that means is we would go into buildings and make them more energy efficient. Since I worked at a company that got state contracts, I was making anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour, which again, I'm making money. That's what I want. That's in alignment. So that year was the craziest year the company had ever had. I ended up getting a promotion to a foreman. And if you fast forward to the end of that year, I had been on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months because most of our contracts were on the road in different states. So I was quite literally living in different states. So we get to the end of the year. I have my final pay stub in my hand. I open it up. Cool. $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. But I had another one of those moments where I said, okay, I don't feel any different, right? There's more money in my bank account and that's great. And there's certainty there and there's security there. And I value that, but I'm still not confident. I'm still scarce. I'm still insecure. I don't understand. Like I thought I would feel better. I thought everything would be fixed now. And in that moment, I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And I fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't want to do the travel because I know the light at the end of the tunnel is not the light at the end of the tunnel that I want. So I end up calling out of work. I end up leaving the job sites early. I end up showing up late and it kept getting worse and worse. And my mental health was taking a turn because I was spending so much time on the road. My physical health was taking a turn. So eventually, James, it got to the point where I woke up in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is probably 6 hours from where I lived. My alarm clock went off at 5:15, sat up, slid to the edge of the bed, lacing up my work boots. I'd done this 1,000 times. But that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head, and every single one was on a different station. One is saying you're stuck here forever. They're never going to make this kind of money again. You got lucky. If you do leave, what will your friends think? You make more money than all of your friends. If you do leave, what will your family think? You make more money than anybody in your family ever has. And if you do leave, and you'll appreciate this one, James, if you do leave, do you think you're going to do this podcast thing? That's what it's going to be. We're going to ride the podcast train off into the sunset here. And in that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. Now, one of the things I talk about very often is the power of the people around you. I reached out to somebody very close to me who is now my business partner and the CEO of our company. And I explained to him what was going on. I said, "Hey, Alan, I'm struggling, man. I'm having this mental health issue. I'm having these dark thoughts. I don't know what to do." And in his wisdom, Alan said, "Kev, you've changed so much over the last couple of years, but your environments haven't changed. I think it's time for you to make a change." And I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later and going full time into what we're doing today. But in the beginning, there was nothing. Nobody was listening. I didn't have any clients. I was very broke. I was in credit card debt. It was very, very challenging. So I think the biggest lesson that I could share with the listeners is if you optimize for happiness, ultimately you'll probably run out of things that make you happy. But if you optimize for fulfillment and you find a mission that is fulfilling, and you find a mission that facilitates growth, and you find a mission that facilitates transformation, evolution, and it's aligned in a purpose, your life can look drastically different. I had all the measurements of happy, but there was always something missing inside. And I think that's kind of the through line of my story. There's a big difference between happiness and fulfillment. Happiness is results driven. If this interview goes well, I will be happy. If James likes me, I will be happy. Regardless of how this goes, I am fulfilled because I am in the process of doing what I'm supposed to be. And I think that's the big difference.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's very well said.
Thank you.
You went through quite a bit, and I hear your story. I heard what you were saying to listeners of this podcast, and I see the struggle. So, can someone really succeed without a struggle, in your opinion?
So, from what I have seen, the amount you struggle will be directly connected to the size of your goals. But in a weird way, and this is where things get weird, in a weird way, it's almost the opposite. So let me frame it. If you want to lose 5 pounds, losing 5 pounds will be easier than losing 50. The amount of struggle losing 5 pounds is going to be less than losing 50. That's just a law of the universe. That's all it is. Something that requires more effort will open up the opportunity for more struggle. It will open up the opportunity for more sacrifice. It'll open up the opportunity for more suffer, but it also will open up the opportunity for more success. So I don't necessarily think you can succeed without struggle. I think when you choose your goals, you also have to choose the potential struggle. Now, here's the other weird thing. In a way, if you set a goal to never struggle, you might get a year of that. You might get 5 years of that. You might get 10 years of that. But in 25 or 30 years, the question is, where will you end up? And I would venture to guess that you will not end up where you want because you're not doing the things necessary to get the results. So it's almost one of those things where, right now, a lot of people might look like they're winning. They just moved into the house. They're doing the vacations. Everything seems like it's really, really, really going well. But we don't know where these people are going to be in 20 or 30 years when they realize, oh, it's kind of been easy up to this point. Like, now what do I do? So yeah, I don't think you can succeed without struggle. And I think the level of struggle is directly connected to the level of success that you want to have.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know from your talk and from your sharing this with me today that this was not an easy journey for you. You met a female, you went to California. I mean, you just done so many things seemingly before you got to where you are. And so just curious, what is something that you wish you knew earlier in your life?
I wish I understood how malleable we are as human beings, how much you can change. I remember Alan, my business partner, he recommended a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And this was very early in my journey of self-improvement. And I remember sending Alan a message saying, hey man, what is the point in me reading this book? I don't what's the point? Why do I have to learn? I don't understand. I didn't understand that the information coming into me was eventually going to be the stuff that ran me and helped me get results I wanted in my life. I assumed, James, for a long time that the way things were today was the way things were forever. That was a belief that I had. You can't change yourself. You're not going to get any smarter than you are. So I wish I understood the importance, and I had that deeper understanding that human beings are very, very malleable. And if you have a growth mindset and you understand most things are changeable, then you're going to be better off in life. That's something I really, really wish I knew before the age of 26. If I learned that when I was 13, we'd have a lot more results now, and we'd have a lot more impact, and things would be a lot different.
You know, I want to say this because my this podcast, I know, and what I'm trying to do is to reach folk who are going through something in life, folk who maybe be depressed, people who are going through some challenges in their lives. They've got just a whole lot of stuff going on, and I'm trying to reach them, and I try to reach them through my podcast and with folks who are willing to be transparent and telling their story. And you are doing an excellent job with that. I got so many folk who lack confidence, they lack purpose, they don't know what they want to do in life. So if you were to say something to them, how would you let listeners, or what will you tell listeners to become more confident and to try to find their purpose in life? What would you say? And because it seems like you've done that, and I just want to know, is there anything particularly that you would say to listeners who are going through these kind of challenges?
One of the important understandings, at least that really helped me, is confidence isn't an on or off switch. Confidence is a spectrum, right? It's not something you either have or you don't have. It's to what degree do you have it? So this is always the story I use for confidence because I think it's the best one in the world. This young lady reached out to me. This was like 4 years ago. This was at the beginning of the podcast. And she sent me a message on Snapchat and said, "Hey, Kev, I listened to the podcast and I am in these large groups of people at my school, but I'm always afraid to start conversations. I don't know how to start a conversation with these people. I'm so afraid to get rejected. I'm afraid to get judged. What do I do?" And I said, "Amy, you and I are going to go to the mall. We're going to go to the mall and we're going to start talking to people. We're just going to go approach people at the mall." So we meet at the mall and we go into this store that sells these giant beanbag chairs. And I said, "Amy, go ask them how much the beanbags cost." And she said, "No, it's going to be weird." I said, "It's their job. They're going to talk to you about how much the beanbags cost. That's their job." So she does that. We go into another store. I said, "Go ask about that piece of furniture." She does that. We go into another store, same thing. We go down to the food court and we start asking about the food. What's this? Is it good? What's in it? How much is it? How much do you get? All the questions that you can ask. And then we were at the point at the end where we were having conversations with strangers, right? Amy was facilitating that. We're getting ready to leave the mall that day, and there's these mechanical zoo animals that you can rent and you can ride them around the mall. I don't know who came up with that idea, but they were there. So we're getting ready to leave and we walk by those animals and Amy says, "Kev, if we were really brave, we would rent those and ride those around." And James, I'm thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that. It's going to be terrible. But I have a video on my phone and I show this at my speeches. Amy and I rode around the mall on these mechanical zoo animals. Somebody who at the beginning of the day did not believe she could have a conversation with strangers because she was so afraid of judgment. She was so afraid of rejection. She was so self-conscious. Literally, and we said this at the end, was fear chasing. She was hoping to get judged. She was hoping to have conversations with strangers. That's all based on the fact that if I said to Amy, when we walked in the mall, "Amy, let's skip all of this other stuff. Let's go ride the zoo animals." If that's the first thing we did, it never would have happened that way. When it comes to confidence, we have to look at the next available option. So if you're afraid to give a speech, the last thing in the world you should do is give a speech in front of 5,000 people. What you should do is start speaking into your phone or start speaking into the mirror or start speaking on a podcast or start speaking on social media. You have to figure out where is your learning zone. So if you want to build confidence, you have to figure out this. What's my comfort zone? What's my learning zone? And where's my anxiety zone? A lot of us are living in comfort or we're living in anxiety and we wonder why we're not getting any more confident. That's why. You have to figure out what's your learning zone. So for me, this podcast right now it's just on the outside of my comfort zone, right? I've done this so many times that I'm comfortable doing this. But if you asked me a question I had never, ever been asked before, and I answered that, that might put me in the learning zone and that might help me build confidence. So that's what I would say about confidence. It's a spectrum and you can do things a little bit differently every day. When you're walking down the aisle at the supermarket, try to hold eye contact with somebody. Start a conversation with a person who's at the checkout counter, right? Those small things can really add up. When it comes to purpose, James, that's a challenging one. And here's why. I think many of us are going out and searching for our purpose, right? It's almost like we're on this wild goose chase for our purpose. When in reality, I think for many of us, our purpose has already happened to us. We've already experienced our purpose in some way, shape, or form, but it crosses this threshold where we say, okay, what would I really like to do? I love animals. I've always loved animals. All right, how would I work with animals? Well, I'd like to make a really cool animal shelter that has a lot of room for the animals to run, and we could have kids come in and play with the animals. It would be awesome. Then this is where things get weird. How am I ever going to make money doing that? And that's where the dream ends. That's where the purpose ends. I think many of us actually understand more than we realize our purpose, but we get lost when it comes to creating the vehicle. The vehicle is what's actually going to make this thing profitable and allow it to run. So a couple questions you can ask yourself when it comes to your purpose. Number one, what would I find you talking about on a Friday night with your friends? Right? I'm most likely going to be talking about self-improvement and being next level. That's something I love talking about. And number two, what is something that you believe at a deep level that you don't believe the world understands enough? So it's something that you know so much about, but nobody else is talking about. And then the third one is, what makes you so incredibly sad? When you go to the beach, maybe you see a bunch of litter, you see a bunch of cans, you see a bunch of cigarettes, you see bags, whatever it may be. It makes you sad to the point where you say, wow, I really wish I could do something about this. That's a couple of hints for what your purpose could be. And then you have to reflect. You have to reflect back to how many times have you said, wow, if only I could do that? Or, when do you lose track of time? When are you so in flow that you lose track of time and nothing else matters? Those are some hints, and you can start. But from there, you got to try stuff, right? You have to try stuff. I've always wanted to help people, but I never knew it was with a podcast until I was interviewed on a podcast. And I said, wow, imagine if you could do that for a living. Boom, there's the vehicle. Then having the belief to do it is another conversation. But yeah, that's what I would say about purpose.
Yeah, but I don't know what to ask you sometimes. This is such a dynamic, an interesting conversation with you today. And I thought about you talking about the young lady who was fearful and who went to the mall. You had her asking everybody certain questions about share about this furniture, about beanbags, and all these other type things. And I wonder about you when I'm looking at you. You don't seem to be somebody who have a confidence problem. You don't seem to be anybody who is fearful of anything. So I just want to ask you the simple question: what's your biggest fear? What is your biggest fear?
Failure. My biggest fear is failure, bar none. I don't like planes. I don't like heights. I don't like tight spaces. But my biggest fear is failure and not being good enough and looking bad and being judged 100%. The interesting thing, James, is I've just done this 1,500 times. That's, if I seem confident here, it's because I spend more time in this office than I do in bed. I mean, I'm pretty confident at sleeping because I've done it for so long, but I'm very confident here as well. So, and I appreciate that, but I do. It's the reps. You're seeing me in an arena where I feel very, very, very good, where there's other places I don't feel that way. So for me, it's failure. It's being left behind. We did a speech recently in front of 3 groups of 350 students. And I said at the beginning, I am afraid of what every one of you thinks of me. I am right now in this moment. I know some of you are judging me, and I don't like that. It doesn't feel good. I'm afraid of that. But at least if I admit it, you're hurting me, right? Like then now you can make the conscious choice. If you want to judge me, that's on you. But yeah, I'm afraid of everything, really, at the end of the day.
So are you vulnerable?
I try to be, yeah. I mean, I think at the deepest layer, vulnerability is the truth. And I mean, you notice how I don't want you to think I'm confident with everything, because if you think I'm confident with everything, there's somebody out there who will not resonate with me because they're not. And if I want to impact people, I have to be vulnerable. I have to live as much in the truth as I'm comfortable doing. So I don't ever want somebody to look at me and think I'm better than I am, because then I can't help, right? If you can't relate to somebody, it's very hard to help. So at the end of the day, I believe vulnerability is living in the truth. And the only way to actually have the level of success and fulfillment and love that we really want, I believe, is to live in the truth. So yeah, I would say I am the most vulnerable I've ever been, but I will also say that is something I've also been practicing for a long, long, long time. So if it seems easy, that is why.
I am speechless talking to you today, I have to admit, because you have given such powerful advice, words that you've shared, and just have been just awesome.
Thank you.
And I think listeners of this podcast can truly, and I know will benefit from your sharing. Uh, Let me ask you a couple more questions, then I'm
Sure.
gonna let you go. What's the biggest thing you've learned from recording over 1,000 episodes? And you have recorded a lot. I haven't even gotten to 100 yet. So when you say recording over 1,000 podcast episodes, that means you're working. So what is the biggest thing you've learned from that?
I would say it's one of the most simple things, but one of the most profound things. From day to day, progress is invisible. From year to year, progress is impossible to miss. That is what I've learned. We do an episode every day. We're going to record tonight. We recorded yesterday. I'm no better. And if I am, it's marginally better to the point where I can't recognize it. And honestly, nobody else can either. But if I look back at this time last year, 365 episodes ago, there is a drastic difference. The biggest thing that I have learned, James, is most people do not do something long enough to actually see the change, because they are looking at the day to day, the minute to minute, the second to second, the week to week, maybe the month to month, when in reality, there's not a ton of change in that short period of time. I did, my business partner and I did a 10-pound, 10-week challenge where we lost 10 pounds in 10 weeks. I gained weight the first week. Imagine if that was my thought, is I tried and I gained weight. It's not meant to be. The day to day, the week to week, that's not necessarily where you're going to see the results. That's not where you're going to see the growth. It's in the trend line over time. So yeah, that's what I would say. Day to day, nothing really shifts, but year to year, you cannot miss the shifts.
Kevin, exciting today. What a
Thank you.
wonderful and awesome interview with you. Have you written any books, anything of that nature, or on self-improvement?
Of course. Yeah. Many. I always recommend Mindset by Carol Dweck. We talked a little bit about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. If you're new to self-improvement and you're thinking about money and wealth, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's a great book. The Compound Effect is a great book. Atomic Habits is a great book. If anybody needs any book recommendations, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Please. Oh, well, great. There you have it. I tell you, Kevin Palmieri, and I want to say it again, Kevin Palmieri, interesting name. Well, how thankful we are to have you share with us today, and I'm certain that listeners will benefit from your sharing. And I just want you to know how much I do appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend.
And please continue the good work, because what you're doing is very, very challenging and rewarding to those who listen to you.
Thank
God
you.
bless you so much.